Today, we're going to pop the hood on India's regulatory framework. We're talking about the incredible, complex machine that takes a single idea and turns it into a law for over 1.4 billion people. It's a massive topic, so let's just dive right in.
This is really the big question, isn't it? For a country as huge and diverse as India, having a system for making and enforcing rules, well, it's not just a nice to have. It's the absolute bedrock that allows society to even function. So, how on earth does it all work?
Okay, so before we get into the nuts and bolts of how laws get made, we need to start at the beginning. Our first stop is the why. Why do we even need laws in the first place?
This timeline shows something really powerful. Our need for written rules is ancient. We're talking thousands of years ago with the Code of Hammurabi, then Rome's 12 Tables. Societies have always tried to write down their core principles. And for modern India, that entire journey leads to its own foundational document, the Constitution, which came into effect in 1950.
So what even is law when you boil it down? Well, here's a great definition. It's a formal set of obligations and duties, but they're not just random rules. They're put in place by the government for two huge reasons: to look out for the welfare of the people and to give everyone a clear path to justice. And in India, every single one of those obligations comes from one place: the Constitution. You should think of it as the master blueprint for the entire country. Every law, every rule, every regulation has to line up with what's in this book. It is, without a doubt, the supreme law of the land. All right, so we've got the whys, and we know the ultimate source. But how does an idea actually get turned into a law? Let's take a look inside what we can call the law factory.
Because India is a federal system, lawmaking power is actually split up. You've got the central government, which makes laws for the whole country. Think of things like income tax. Then you have state governments, and they create laws just for their own states. And then there's this interesting joint list for topics where both the center and the states can make laws.
So here's the journey pretty much every law has to take. It starts out as just a proposal, which is called a bill. That bill then gets debated, and it has to be passed by both houses of parliament. That's the Lok Sabha, the lower house, and the Rajya Sabha, the upper house. If it clears both of those hurdles, it goes to the president. Once the president signs off on it and it's officially notified, it finally graduates from being a bill to an act of parliament. And just like that, it's law.
But, making a law is really only half the battle. A rule on a piece of paper doesn't mean much if no one's there to enforce it. And that brings us to the next part of our system, the rule keepers.
This is where the different government ministries come into play. Once Parliament passes an act, it becomes the job of a specific ministry, like the Ministry of Finance or Corporate Affairs, to actually implement that law and make sure it's being followed all across the country. And this table shows you some of the key players in that process. You've got the Ministry of Finance, which kind of steers the whole economy. Then there's the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, for all things banking. SEBI is the big one for the stock markets. The MCA, or Ministry of Corporate Affairs, handles company law. And the IBBI deals with bankruptcy. Each one is a super powerful regulator in its own field. Let's just zoom in on one of these for a second. The RBI. It's not just any bank. It is the central bank. It regulates the entire financial system, it controls the supply of the rupee, and it basically acts as the guardian of the whole country's economic stability. It's a huge deal. Okay, so we've got the people who make the laws and the people who enforce them. But what happens when we disagree on what a law means? Or if someone thinks it's been broken? Well, that leads us to our final and absolutely crucial piece of the puzzle, the courts. They get the final word. The job of the judiciary sounds simple, but in practice, it is massive. It really comes down to two main things: interpreting a law when its meaning isn't totally clear, and resolving disputes when people or groups have a conflict. Now, this system isn't just one big court. It's actually structured like a pyramid, with different levels. And that whole hierarchy is designed to make sure that justice is accessible to everyone, whether you're in a small village or in the nation's capital. Right at the very top of that pyramid, the absolute peak, is the Supreme Court of India. It's the highest judicial body in the entire country, the final court of appeal. And this quote right here, it says it all. Once the Supreme Court makes a decision, that's it. That ruling is binding on every other court in the country. There is no higher legal authority. It's the end of the line. Now, one step down from the Supreme Court, you've got the high courts. As a general rule, each state and union territory has one, and it acts as the highest court you can appeal to within that specific region. And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, there are 25 high courts operating across India right now. That number alone tells you just how vast this judicial network really is. And finally, at the base of our pyramid, we have the district courts. For most people, this is where they'll actually interact with the justice system. These are the courts handling the thousands and thousands of cases, both civil and criminal, that pop up at the local, grassroots level every single day. These courts are basically dealing with two main flavors of law. You've got criminal law, which is all about punishing wrongs against society as a whole, things like theft or assault. And then there's civil law, which is about resolving disputes between private individuals or companies, like a fight over a contract. So let's just do a quick recap of the whole journey. It all starts with the why. Society needs structure. That leads to the who, Parliament, who makes the laws. Then you have the enforcers, the government ministries who put those laws into action. And finally, when there's a question, you have the interpreters, the courts, who provide the final word. It's a complete interlocking system.